Hello everyone! In this episode I will show you how you can use Genesis 8.1 materials on the Genesis 8.0 figures. So new shaders from the 8.1 series on 8.0 figures. This is inspired by a little discussion I had with one of my supporters, Dominic, on my Discord server. He was asking how easy is this to do? Is this even possible? And can I use the reverse of a video in which I'm showing how to convert Genesis 8 characters into 8.1? And can he just use the reverse of that process, was the question. And sadly the answer is no, it's not quite that simple, because the Genesis 8.1 figures have an additional material zone that Genesis 8.0 doesn't have. So here you see them side by side. The figures, this is 8.0, and this, everything that's blue here is the torso map on 8.0, and on 8.1 the torso has been split into a body map and a head map. So this is the face here, but anything that's basically red here is a different material zone than this on 8.1, and on 8.0 we have that as a combined surface. So there's that. There's also some geometric or UV layout changes that have been made, but I've managed to convert the characters. There's a little bit of fiddling involved, and if you follow these instructions you'll be able to make that happen yourself as well. So it's not a one-click thing, but you know, I'll talk you through all the steps that are required. There's also an article here that I've written that explains this step by step. I'll link to that in the description. You give that a glance, and you know, it essentially describes all the steps that I'm going to show you now in this video. This is the final result here. So on the left we have 8.1 with that's the base character with the Victoria 8.1 shaders, and on the right hand side here we have the 8.0 base figure with the 8.1 shaders. So there we go, and it all looks very good. I'm going to show you how to do this. How do you create all this from scratch? I'll start by creating a brand new folder on my desktop or anywhere else you would like, and this is going to be called G81 conversion or G81 conversion. I'm going to go and map that here on my content library tab here on the right hand side. I'm going to just add base directory, and then I'll go and find this G81 conversion, because this is where we're going to go and save a lot of the shaders into that we need later on. Let me go and load the Genesis base figure in, the 8.1 base figure to begin with. I'm going to use the dev load here, so that makes it easy to spot if any materials have not properly been converted or whatnot. So it's you know, and also it avoids nudity on YouTube, which is always a good sign. So let's load her in, and the first thing that we're going to need to do is export her out at base resolution, and that is so that we can get the Genesis 8.1 UVs up onto Genesis 8.0. So that is the way the textures are wrapped around the figures. Is there have been some minor updates, and we need those new UV bases. To do that, we head over to the parameters tab under mesh resolution. Let's switch that from high to base resolution. And the dev character doesn't have anything attached like tear ducts and eyelashes and stuff like that. So if you're using not the base character but the one with the textures, then you may have to switch those off or remove them before you export that. Otherwise the UVs will not be imported properly. So with the dev load character it works perfectly fine, and I'll just put that into here. I'll call this G81 base, and we're going to save this out as OBJ. Hit save, and then pick at the top here, just pick the DAZ Studio preset, and everything else can stay the same. That's that. Hit accept, and that's that. I'm going to go and move her over to the left a little bit, and just because I don't really like looking at the A pose, I might use one of my favorite products, which is called the Pose Architect. I'm going to look for the natural pose. I'm going to dial that into about 80%. Just so I'm going to dial it into 80%. Thank you. And I'm just going to do that so that their arms don't intersect. So that's totally optional. One of those things. So now I'll go and load in my Genesis 8.0 dev load character. And if this dialog comes up, it's just DAZ Studio's way of saying, hey, would you like to apply this character to the one that's currently selected, or would you like to load this in as a new figure? And I need a new figure here, so I'll go and select that, just so that we have two figures in the scene at the same time. There we go. I might also go and change that pose pretty much immediately. Select that figure on the natural pose. I'm just going to use 80 without hitting the mouse wheel all the time. Perfect. So now we have these two characters standing in there side by side. Neither of them have shaders, but that's okay for now. Let's bring in the UVs first so that we've got that over and done with. So that happens by selecting the Genesis 8 character, and then you head over to Edit, Object, or Figure, doesn't matter. Either way will work fine. Geometry, and then there's an option to load a UV set, and that will allow us to get a little extra drop down in the Surfaces tab in a moment. And let me actually show you why we're doing this. So if I select my 8.1 character and head over to any of the surfaces on the character, and I'll go to the body, I can go and look for UVs here, or just UV, and you can see that any of these surfaces, they have two sets. They have the base female and the 8.1 female base. So what this means is that the 8.1 character can deal with 8.0 materials. It knows what to do with them. If one of them is loaded, you can just switch over and the UVs will look okay. But if I do the same on my Genesis 8 character and select her and go and choose anything like maybe the torso map here or the teeth, it doesn't really matter. I only have base female. I don't have anything else. And this is what we're essentially making now by loading that in. We've exported 8.1 out, and those UV sets can now be loaded in. So we're going to go to Edit, Object, Geometry, Load UV Set, or Figure, Geometry, Load UV Set, doesn't matter. You do that and you go and pick your folder, and this is G81 base. That's the one we've just exported. Open that up, and then it comes up with another little dialog that says give it a name, and I'm going to call this Genesis 8.1 UVs, just so that I know what that is. And this now makes that slider available on my Genesis 8.0 figure as well. So now we have two UVs to switch between. And we're going to make use of that later once we've applied some of these shaders. That's kind of step one done. Step two also has to do with surfaces. Namely, we need to create something at the back of my 8.0 figure here. If I go to use my surface selection tool, I can see that the 8.1 figure has this map here, so legs and arms and all that, that's all the same, including the face. But on 8.1 we have this map, which is the body map, but on 8.1 we have this map here, which is the torso map. So we no longer have torso on 8.1, we have body and head, which is this one. But on 8.0 we have one combined map of these two things, which is just called torso. So we need to go and create ourselves this thing at the top here, basically new material of that. There is a way to do this with the geometry editor, and that involves me selecting these very polygons at the top here that are in the exact same spot as they are over here. And the easiest way to find my reference points here is, in fact, if I just quickly dress up both figures and then give them a skin shader so that we can see what I need to paint out. Let me just go and use the Victoria 8.1 skin shader. So if I apply that to my 8.1 figure, then everything's going to work fine. But if I try to do the same on my 8.0 figure right now, I'll see that there'll be an error message. Case in point, if I go and do that and I'll try to apply the same thing on here, then I get this. An error occurred while reading the file, and I'm not really going to tell you why. So that's, very helpful there. But what we could do now is grab, with the surface selection tool, grab this surface here and head over to Edit, Copy Selected Surfaces, and then go over to my 8.0 figure, select that surface, and head over to Edit, Paste to Selected Surfaces. So what that'll do is it won't work properly, but we can see the area that we need to paint out, namely everything that is now white on this character here. And just as a reference, I'm going to go and take this surface here, which is the head surface. I'm going to go and give that a different color, just temporarily, so that I know what it is that we're painting in here. That is the part that we need to paint out on my Genesis 8.0 figure. So this is just a reference. Okay, let's do this thing. With my Genesis 8 character selected, head over to the geometry editor here. That's the little pencil with the grid icon here. Or head over to Tools, Geometry Editor. And make sure you have the Tool Settings tab open. So we need that. Otherwise we won't know. Otherwise we can't set the new surfaces here. We can have a look under surfaces. These are all the surfaces we have, and we need one additional one. So we're basically this one short. So what I'll do is I'll go in here. I've got my polygon selection active, and if I right click, I can go to selection mode and say drag selection. You can use any of these combinations here. Just do whatever feels natural and comfortable. I'm going to go and left click and drag to paint all that out. It might be a little bit difficult to see in the texture shaded view, so feel free to switch to something like the wire texture shaded, or just the wire shaded. That's probably the easiest one, wire shaded. Well, wire texture shader is going to work fine. To add polygons to your selection, hold Control. That'll add things to it here. If you've gone over and you need to remove some, hold Alt. Alt will remove them. So anything that's now yellow, I'll add that with Control. Give me a second while I do that. Oh yeah, you can also go and increase your cursor size here, the selection radius. And if you see too many lines here, feel free to change your Genesis 8.0 character over under the Parameters tab. Under General, under Mesh Resolution, change her to Base Res as well. 8.1 is already Base Res. This now means all these lines will disappear, and make your selection life a little easier there. You can also, if you game, you can also go and see if you can find some of these other selections that are already in place. So back on the Tool Settings tab, you can have a look on Face Groups, and you can select something like the neck and the upper neck. That gives you a little bit of a head start here. So you can select all those things from there. I'm just going to do it by hand. It's only going to take a second. Now here we can see that the texture, the original texture, has some seams. So you got to go and paint up to here. And if you need a reference, feel free to keep checking that 8.1 figure. Like here, the neck and the upper neck, I can actually go and just pick that from my face groups here. And that gives me a head start here. So neck, I'll just say plus. That's this part here. And then there's also the upper neck. That's that. I'll say plus here. So then all that selection has now been made for me. That's kind of nice. But you can just, you can just paint that out. Depends on what floats your boat. The geometry editor is a bit of a scary tool, but it's also very powerful. So it's a nice weapon to know more about. And that should be everything here on the back. Then, so the ears, they're not covered. They're different material zones, so don't paint those out. Those things here, always with the Control key, you add things to it. And then if you want to remove something, you hold Alt down. And then navigating the viewport, just in case you don't know that, is Control and Alt together while left clicking and dragging anywhere in the viewport. That'll do this, so you don't have to go over here. In case you're using these things, Control and Alt, left clicking in the viewport does this. Control Alt, right clicking will pan. It grows on you after a while. Okay, I think I have it all. Just in case I don't, let's just compare the amount of selected faces there. So I'll just say wire shaded. Let me go and save this first of all as a selection set. That's down here. This is not something we need, but I just do this for my personal, well, safety really. Create selection set from selected, and I'll call this one back of head just for now. And I can tell this is now, it says here 623 polygons. Let me go and compare that to Genesis 8.1. If I go and select, so she doesn't have a selection on here at the moment, but if I go and select her head with the plus sign, this should be 624. What was it again on Genesis 8? I've got 623, so I must have forgotten one. That means let's have another closer look. and which one isn't painted out. There's probably something behind the ears. That's very easy to forget. There's one polygon missing. See if I can find it. There it is. This is it. You see that? This is the one I've forgotten. So ding, now it's 624. Okay, good. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you forget one, but you know, it's that one small part of your figure that just, you know, that's not so good. Okay, let me go and save that as a new selection set here and say back of head 2, new and improved, and back of head 1 we don't really need anymore, so I'll go and remove that. There. Remove select set. There we go. So double clicking lets me rename these things, and with this we want to basically do the same thing but on a surface here. So with our selection in place, I'll go and click on surfaces here, then I'll go and right click and say create surface from selected, because that is what we've selected here on our thing, and they'll be automatically subtracted from whatever other surface they're currently part of. So I'll call this one head and hit accept. And now we have a head surface just like we have on Genesis 8.1. Conversely, the torso surface over here, if I go and select that, that's the stuff that's now going to turn red here. Let me just get rid of that yellow selection at the top here by right clicking, geometry selection, clear selection. There we go. So this is now anything that's got this red shadow on it, that is now the new, basically the body map. So I'm going to go and rename that from torso to body, just so that I remember, you know, what's what here. Okay, so now we have the surfaces on both figures renamed, and that is part 2 over and done with. Technically, in the third part now is that we can go and copy and paste each surface from one figure to the other. That should technically work, but in reality, sadly, it does not. Let me just give you a quick example here. If I go back to my Genesis 8.1 figure on the Surfaces tab, and I'll go and select this surface here that we've turned pink, we don't really want to do that. If I head over here to Genesis 8.1 in the Surfaces tab, and I'll select everything, and I'll go and right click and say copy selected surfaces, and then I'll do the same on Genesis 8.0, select literally everything. Now that they're named the same thing, I should be able to say paste to selected surfaces so that all the shaders are being applied there. I see a little bit of weirdness going on the face, but that's kind of okay because we have a new UV set that we need to switch to. So let's do that with just like with everything selected here, just in this on the Surfaces tab still, search for UV and then switch it over from base female to Genesis 8.1 UVs. And in filament, you think, hey, this has worked, this is great. But if you look closer, you think, hey, this has actually not so much worked. I mean, it's, you know, on first glance, the textures appear to be the same, but there's some extra glossiness here that I didn't quite see on Genesis 8.1, so I'm not sure what that's about. If you zoom in closer, you'll see that some seams now appear where they didn't appear before, and that's all just weird. And what's up with that? So we'll take care of that in a second. The other issue is that if you were to switch this over to iRay, you would find that the shader doesn't look at all like the one that it does on 8.1, and that is because the copy and paste process, I think this is just something I'm deducing here, the copy paste process will paste whatever channels are already in existence on 8.0, but many channels are new on 8.1 and they don't exist, so it doesn't then go and recreate them. It just goes and says, well, if that doesn't exist, I can't paste anything in there, so it's not copy and pasting isn't really working here. So that's a bit of a shame. So what we need to do instead is we need to go and select every single surface on 8.1 and save that out as a shader, and then go and apply each of these to Genesis 8.0's version. That does sound a little clunky, and I'm sure there's a handy little clever script for that, but I am not in possession of one, so this is just something that this is how I would do it. So I'd go here to the Surfaces tab. You can go and select them with the Surfaces tool as well, but if you go and do it from here, it's easy to just go and step through them one by one. So you might find it easier to have the Content Library tab on a different location so that the Surfaces tab is open at the same time as the Content Library tab. I'm just going to go and do this by clicking and dragging it over here. So now I have the Surfaces tab here and my Content Library here, a G8 conversion. This is where I'm going to save all my shaders now. Hope this makes sense so far. So I'll go and select my arms, and I'm in my G8.1 conversion folder, so I'm going to go and hit that little plus icon here and choose to save a shader preset. And I'll call that 01 arms. Hit accept, and then I'll do the same with the body. And I'm doing this with numbers so that it's easy for me to apply them later. So 02 body. And this is, remember, this is with the 8.1 figure selected. Let me go do this with all the materials here quickly. If you want to save yourself some time, don't worry about the small things like the fingernails and the inner mouth stuff. And chances are you're probably going to be okay with the 8 material. So in that case, just apply an 8 shader to your 8 figure and only convert the outside things like the arms and the legs and the lips and the mouth. So anything that you can see from the outside. If you want to save yourself some time, if you want to be really pedantic about it and do what I do and just literally save out one after the other. Goody, we've got 17 individual shaders, all with nondescript thumbnails. That's perfect. I'm going to go and drag my content library down to the right here, just so that I can see my viewport as I go and apply each of these things in the viewport now. So I'm going to go and do this with changing over to my Genesis 8.0 figure, and then I'm going to go and select essentially every single surface here, and I'll go over to the Content Library tab and basically apply each of these to a surface. So these are the arms here, and this might take a little bit of time, but if you do this, all the channels that do not exist on the original figure will be recreated when you apply the shader. So some of these might take a little bit of time. Those are the ears, and you can even switch this over to iRay. That might take a little bit of time every time you apply this, but you will see how each surface will change there. That's kind of nice. So those are the ears here. Now we have the eye moisture. Some of these are not very noticeable. Eye socket. Sclera, teeth, and toenails. There we go. I'm going to go and dock my Content Library tab back where I'm used to it being, namely over here. And that was that. That's the conversion. That's the only thing that now remains to be done is to switch our figures back into high resolution, of course, since we've switched both of them over to base resolution earlier. But that's just a minor thing. And now you have yourself a whole Genesis 8.0 figure with all that he or she had to offer, but with Genesis 8.1 shader. So if my lighting was a little better, you'd probably see all the advantages here. And now you can go ahead and either save this as a subscene, or you can also go and save this as a material preset and apply that to other Genesis 8.0 figures. So this is how you would do that in the Content Library tab with the plus icon. You can, with the Genesis 8.0 figure selected, of course, you can go and save yourself a material preset. And provided that you have made the selection exactly like you did it on this figure, and provided that you've imported the Genesis 8.1 UVs, you can go and load that material preset onto this figure, onto subsequent figures, and then use that shader on other 8.0 figures. I hope this was helpful. I know it wasn't a very one-click type of process, and you do need to put a little bit of work in to make this happen, but it is something that is definitely possible, and without external tools, and without having to pay anybody for the privilege. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.